The Galactic Council had watched Earth for a very long time. For thousands of years, their ships had hidden behind the moon and observed the small blue planet. They saw humans fight endless wars. They saw them destroy their forests and poison their rivers. They saw them kill each other over lines drawn on maps. The council was not impressed. "They are children," said the Eye representative, a being made of living crystal that sparkled with ancient light. "Dangerous children who play with fire and do not understand the burns." They agreed. They were massive creatures who could bend gravity with their minds. To them, humans were like insects who had somehow learned to build rockets. Impressive for insects, perhaps, but still insects. When humanity finally built ships that could travel faster than light in the year 2247, the Council held a vote. After much debate, they decided to allow humans into their union. It was not because they respected humanity. It was because they felt sorry for them. It was charity, nothing more. Ambassador was chosen to represent Earth. She was a small woman with dark hair and calm eyes. She stood before the Great Assembly, a chamber so large that clouds formed near its ceiling. 1,200 alien delegates looked down at her from seats carved into walls that stretched up for miles. She looked very small. She looked very alone. "Humanity thanks the Galactic Council for this honor," she said. Her voice was steady and polite. "We are eager to learn from our elder brothers and sisters among the stars." The delegates whispered to each other. Some laughed quietly. The Eye representative leaned toward his neighbor. "She speaks well for an animal," he said. Arbiter, the leader of the council, watched Ambassador carefully. He was an ancient being with 4 eyes and skin like weathered stone. He had seen 10,000 species rise and fall. He had welcomed hundreds of new civilizations into the council. Something about this human woman bothered him. He could not say what. "Humanity is granted provisional membership," he announced. "You will receive trade routes in Sector 44. You may establish colonies in the outer territories. You will patrol the border regions near the galactic rim." Bowed her head. "We are grateful." Every other species would have complained. Sector 44 had the worst trade routes. The outer territories were barren and worthless. The border patrols were dangerous and thankless work that no one else wanted. But humanity said nothing. They simply accepted. This was strange. For 50 years, humans remained quiet. They worked their terrible trade routes without complaint. They built small colonies on frozen rocks at the edge of nowhere. They patrolled the dangerous borders and never asked for help when pirates attacked their ships. They were polite. They were humble. They asked questions and listened carefully to the answers. They never argued in council meetings. They never demanded better treatment. And they never, ever invited anyone to visit Earth. This was the thing that bothered most of all. Every species in the council loved to show off there. The Eye invited delegates to see their crystal caves. They held ceremonies in their floating cities. Even the smallest, weakest species took pride in their planet of origin. But humans always said no. "Earth is undergoing environmental restoration," Ambassador would explain with a polite smile. "The damage from our industrial period is still being repaired. We are not ready for visitors." Did not believe this. He had seen the scans of Earth from council probes. The planet looked healthy. The oceans were blue. The forests were green. There was nothing that needed hiding. And yet humanity built a defense grid around their world that rivaled anything in the galaxy. Ships that approached without permission simply vanished. No warnings, no wreckage, just silence. "What are they hiding?" asked his advisors. "Nothing important," they assured him. "Humans are ashamed of their primitive past. They probably have ugly monuments they do not want us to see. It is vanity, nothing more." But was not so sure. He watched Ambassador in the council chambers. She sat quietly among the delegates, always listening, always watching. Sometimes he caught her looking at the star maps with an expression he could not read. It was not the look of a newcomer learning her way around. It was the look of someone searching for something. Or someone. 50 years passed. Humanity remained in the shadows. They never complained. They never demanded. They simply worked and watched and waited. The council forgot about them. There were bigger concerns. The Eye argued about mining rights. The worried about dark energy fluctuations near the rim. A new plague swept through 3 systems and required quarantine. Humans were not important enough to think about. This was exactly what humanity wanted. On Earth, beneath the blue oceans, something vast and ancient waited. In the mountains of every continent, hidden doors led to chambers that had not been opened in 12,000 years. In the hearts of ordinary cities, ordinary people lived ordinary lives, never knowing what slept beneath their feet. Ambassador knew. A small number of humans knew. They had kept the secret for generations, passing it down from parent to child, waiting for the day when the truth would finally matter. That day was coming soon. In her private quarters on the council station, stood before a window and looked out at the stars. Her reflection stared back at her, and for just a moment, her eyes seemed to glow with a light that was not quite human. "Patience," she whispered to herself, "just a little longer." Somewhere in the dark between galaxies, something ancient stirred. Something that had been sleeping for 12,000 years was beginning to wake. And humanity had a great deal of explaining to do. The Eye were proud creatures. They believed they were the oldest in species in the galaxy. They did not like mysteries, and humanity was a mystery they could not solve. So they cheated. A small probe, no bigger than a human fist, slipped through the darkness of space toward Earth. It was illegal, of course. Council law forbade spying on member worlds. But the Eye had done illegal things before. They were old enough to know that rules were for younger species. The probe was their finest work. It could hide from any sensor. It could pass through any shield. It had taken 200 years to build. It survived for 17 seconds after entering Earth's defense grid. In those 17 seconds, it sent back data that would change the galaxy forever. Was sleeping when his advisors burst into his chambers. Their faces were pale with shock. Their hands trembled as they handed him a data crystal. "You need to see this," they said, "now." He watched the footage alone at first. Then he watched it again. Then he called an emergency meeting of the full council. The Great Assembly had not gathered at midnight in 3,000 years. Delegates arrived in their sleeping clothes, confused and angry. They demanded to know why they had been disturbed. The beings of pure light flickered with irritation. Then the footage played, and everyone went silent. The probe had expected to find a wounded planet slowly healing from human stupidity. Instead, it found something that should not exist. Massive structures covered the ocean floor. They stretched for thousands of miles, built from materials that council scientists could not identify. Energy readings pulsed from beneath the water, stronger than anything in the galactic registry. The numbers were so high that 3 delegates insisted the probe must have been broken. But the probe was not broken. In the mountains of every continent, the probe detected hollow spaces, hidden chambers, sealed vaults that reached down to the planet's core. The energy signatures from these vaults matched nothing in council records. They matched nothing in council theory. They matched things that the council had classified as myths. "This is impossible," the Eye representative whispered. His crystal body had gone dark with shock. "These readings suggest technology beyond anything we possess, beyond anything we have ever imagined." "The humans are primitives," a delegate growled. "They were throwing rocks at each other when we built our first starships. This must be a mistake." "It is not a mistake," said quietly. His 4 eyes had not left the screen. "Look at the defense response." The footage showed the final moments of the probe. Something had detected it. Something had reached out from beneath the ocean with casual, almost lazy precision. The probe's shields, the finest in the galaxy, had meant nothing. The probe had simply stopped existing. The defense system classified our probe as non-hostile, said. That was the minimum response. That was them being gentle. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted over each other. Some demanded immediate military action against Earth. Others called for evacuation of nearby systems. 3 species announced they were leaving the council entirely. Through it all, Ambassador sat calmly in her seat. She had not moved since the footage began. She had not spoken a single word. Raised his hand for silence. The chamber slowly quieted. Ambassador, he said, explain. Every eye in the chamber turned to the small human woman. 1,200 delegates from across the galaxy watched her rise from her seat. She looked up at the frozen image on the screen, the image of impossible technology hidden beneath familiar oceans. And then she smiled. It was not the smile of someone caught in a lie. It was not the smile of someone afraid. It was the smile of someone who had been holding a secret for a very long time and was finally allowed to speak. Finally, she said, we were wondering how long we would have to keep pretending. The words hung in the air like thunder. Pretending, leaned forward. What do you mean, pretending? Looked around the chamber. She looked at the ancient eye who had mocked humanity for 50 years. She looked at the mighty who had treated humans like clever animals. She looked at every species that had Earth and laughed at its primitive children. You watched us for centuries, she said. You saw our wars and our pollution and our stupidity. You thought you understood us. You thought we were young and foolish and weak. She paused. You were wrong. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Raised her hand, and the murmurs stopped. There was something in her eyes now, something old and powerful that made even the eldest delegates fall silent. Humanity did not discover faster-than-light travel in 2247, she said. We rediscovered it. We did not stumble upon technology we barely understood. We remembered technology we had chosen to forget. She walked toward the center of the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the silence. 12,000 years ago, humanity was not crawling in caves and hunting animals. 12,000 years ago, we ruled an empire that made your greatest civilizations look like children playing in the dirt. The eye representative made a sound like breaking glass. Impossible. We would have found evidence. We would have seen the ruins. You did not find evidence, said, because we did not leave any. We erased everything. We burned our cities and buried our technology and made ourselves forget. We chose to become primitive. We chose to start over. Why? Demanded. Why would any species do such a thing? Smile faded. For the first time, something like fear crossed her face. Because something was coming, she said. Something terrible. Something we could not defeat, no matter how advanced we were. So we hid. We made ourselves small and weak and invisible. We hoped that if we were primitive enough, it would not find us. She looked up at the stars visible through the chamber's crystal ceiling. 6 months ago, we detected a signal from beyond the galactic rim, a signal we have not heard in 12,000 years. Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow filled the entire chamber. It found us anyway, and now it is coming back. The silence in the great assembly lasted for a long time. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the beings who existed as living light had frozen in place like statues. Ambassador stood alone in the center of the chamber. She looked tired now, as if speaking the truth had cost her something precious. I know this is difficult to believe, she said, so let me show you. She touched a device on her wrist. The chamber's display screens flickered and changed. New images appeared, images that had been hidden in Earth's archives for 12,000 years. The delegates saw cities that floated among the clouds. They saw ships that moved between stars like birds flying between trees. They saw humans walking on the surface of suns, protected by shields that laughed at physics. They saw wonders that made the Council's greatest achievements look like toys built by children. This was old humanity, said. This was what we were before the fall. The Eye representative's crystal body was flickering rapidly, a sign of extreme distress. These images could be fake. This could be a trick. It is not a trick, said. Your probe confirmed it. The technology beneath Earth's oceans is real. The vaults in our mountains are real. Everything I am showing you exists. It has always existed, waiting for the day when we would need it again. She changed the image. Now the screens showed something different, something wrong. The delegates saw darkness that moved like a living thing. They saw ships that were not ships, but something worse. They saw worlds being consumed, stars going dark, entire civilizations screaming as they were erased from existence. We called them the Hollow, said. We do not know where they came from, we do not know what they want. We only know that they consume everything they touch. They do not conquer, they do not rule, they simply eat. The footage showed a battle. Human ships, magnificent and terrible, fighting against the darkness. Weapons that cracked reality itself. Shields that bent space and time. It was not enough. We fought them for 1,000 years, said. We threw everything we had at them. We built weapons that could destroy galaxies. We created soldiers who did not need to sleep or eat or breathe. We sacrificed billions of lives in battles that lasted centuries. The images showed defeat after defeat, human worlds falling, human fleets burning, the darkness spreading across the galaxy like ink spreading through water. We were losing, said simply. No matter what we did, no matter what we built, they adapted. They learned. They grew stronger. Eventually, our leaders realized the truth. We could not win. We could only delay the end. She paused. The chamber was completely silent. So they made a choice, the hardest choice any civilization has ever made. The screens showed Earth. Not the Earth the delegates knew, but an Earth of crystal towers and floating gardens and cities that stretched from pole to pole. They decided to hide, said. Not just our planet, our entire species, our history, our memory, everything that made us who we were. The footage showed humans destroying their own cities, sinking their own ships, burying their own technology beneath mountains and oceans. The screens showed people weeping as they erased everything their ancestors had built. We created a virus that attacked our own minds, explained. It destroyed our memories of technology. It made us forget how to build starships. It erased 10,000 years of progress in a single generation. She looked around the chamber at the horrified faces. Our children woke up in caves, not knowing who they were or what they had lost. They started over with stones and fire and animal skins. They built new civilizations from nothing, never knowing they were the descendants of gods. The delegate finally found his voice. Why? Why not simply flee to another galaxy? Because the Hollow would have followed, said. They can sense our technology. The more advanced we are, the easier we are to find. The only way to survive was to become so primitive that we vanished from their sight. And this worked, asked. For 12,000 years, yes. The Hollow lost interest in our galaxy. They moved on to other prey. We watched them leave and then we waited. Generation after generation, we kept the secret. A small number of humans always knew the truth. We guarded the archives. We protected the technology. We waited for the day when the Hollow might return. She touched her wrist device again. The screens showed a map of the galaxy. A red dot blinked at the very edge, far beyond the rim. 6 months ago, our long-range sensors detected a signal, a hollow signal. They have remembered us. They are coming back. Panic erupted in the chamber. Delegates screamed and shouted. Some tried to flee. The Eye representative shattered into 1,000 pieces and had to be carefully reassembled. Slammed his staff against the floor. The sound echoed like thunder, and slowly order returned. How long, he asked. How long until they arrive? Met his eyes. Our best estimate is 18 months, perhaps less. And your hidden technology, your buried weapons, can they stop the hollow now? Was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was heavy with the weight of 12,000 years. We do not know, she admitted. We are stronger than we were. We have learned things the old humanity never imagined. But the hollow have had 12,000 years to grow stronger too. She looked around the chamber one final time. This is why we hid among you. This is why we accepted your worst assignments and asked no questions. We needed to understand this galaxy. We needed to know who would stand with us when the darkness returned. She straightened her shoulders. The question now is simple. Will you stand with us, or will you die alone? The next 3 days were chaos. Species that had not spoken in centuries screamed at each other across the council chambers. The accused humanity of deception. The Eye demanded that Earth be destroyed before the hollow arrived. Some delegates simply packed their belongings and fled to the farthest corners of the galaxy, hoping that distance would save them. It would not. Ambassador watched the chaos with tired eyes. She understood their fear. She had lived with that same fear her entire life. Every human who knew the truth had carried that weight, generation after generation, waiting for this moment. Now the moment had come, and there was no more time for hiding. On Earth, the awakening began. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, doors that had not opened in 12,000 years began to move. Ancient machines hummed to life. Lights flickered on in chambers so vast that they had their own weather systems. Humans in simple boats felt the water vibrate beneath them and wondered what was happening below. In the mountains of Tibet, a shepherd watched in amazement as a hidden door appeared in the rock face. In the deserts of Australia, sand fell away to reveal structures of gleaming metal. In the forests of Brazil, trees that had stood for thousands of years turned out to be disguised sensor towers. The archives were opening. All across Earth, ordinary people suddenly received messages on their phones. The messages contained a single word: remember. Those who received them felt something shift in their minds. Knowledge that had been locked away, passed down through genetic memory, suddenly became clear. A baker in Paris remembered how to build engines that could outrun light. A teacher in Tokyo remembered the mathematics of folding space. A farmer in Kansas remembered battle tactics that had been used against enemies who had died before the pyramids were built. Humanity was waking up. The council sent observers to watch. What they saw terrified them. The primitive, human colonies transformed overnight. Hidden facilities rose from the ground. Ships that had looked like simple trading vessels revealed weapons that could crack moons in half. The patrol routes humanity had accepted, the worst assignments in the galaxy, turned out to be carefully chosen defensive positions. For 50 years, humanity had been preparing. They planned this, realized. Every assignment they accepted, every territory they colonized, it was all part of a strategy. He looked at a map of human positions. They formed a perfect defensive line along the galactic rim, exactly where the hollow would enter. Every colony was positioned to support the others. Every patrol route covered a critical approach vector. They have been ready for 50 years, he said. They were just waiting for us to catch up. On the council station, Ambassador appeared before the assembly one final time. But now she was not alone. Behind her stood figures in armor that seemed to drink the light around it. Their faces were hidden behind helmets of black metal, and they moved with a grace that was not quite human. These are the awakened, said. They carry the memories of the First War. They have trained since birth for this moment. They remember what it means to fight the hollow. One of the awakened stepped forward. He removed his helmet, revealing a young man with ancient eyes. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 12,000 years. My name is, he said. My ancestors stood against the hollow when your species were still learning to make fire. Their memories live in my blood. Their skills live in my hands. I am not alone. There are millions like me. We have waited a very long time for this fight." The council delegates stared at him. Even the proudest species felt small before this young man, who carried the ghosts of a civilization older than their oldest myths. "What do you need from us?" asked quietly. Answered, "We do not need your technology. We do not need your weapons. What we need is simpler and harder." She looked around the chamber at the gathered species. "We need you to trust us. We need you to fight beside us. We need you to remember that the galaxy is bigger than old grudges and ancient pride." The Eye representative, newly reformed after his earlier shattering, spoke up. "You lied to us for 50 years. Why should we trust you now?" "Because we did not lie to hurt you," said. "We lied to protect you. If we had revealed the truth earlier, panic would have spread. The Hollow can sense fear. They are drawn to it. Our silence gave the galaxy 50 years of peace." She paused. "And because we are not asking you to trust us with your lives, we are asking you to trust us with ours. Humanity will lead the defense. Humanity will face the darkness first. All we ask is that you stand behind us and do not run." The chamber was quiet. Species looked at each other, ancient enemies sitting side by side, all of them facing the same impossible choice. Then slowly, the delegate rose. She was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at, a being of pure light in a universe of darkness. "The will stand with humanity," she said. "We are few and our weapons are weak, but we will not run." One by one, other species rose. The proud and stubborn, the small species from forgotten corners of the galaxy. Even the Eye, who had mocked humanity for so long, stood and pledged their support. Was the last to rise. He looked at Ambassador with his 4 ancient eyes. "We laughed at you," he said. We treated you like children playing at civilization." He bowed his head. "We were fools. The Galactic Council stands with humanity." Felt tears in her eyes, but she did not let them fall. There would be time for tears later, if any of them survived. "Then let us prepare," she said. "The Hollow are coming, and this time we will not hide." Outside the station windows, Earth's defense grid hummed to life. Ships that had slept for 12,000 years rose from the oceans and took their places among the stars. The galaxy held its breath. The war was about to begin. The Hollow arrived on a Tuesday. They came from the darkness between galaxies, a fleet so vast that it blotted out the stars. Their ships were not made of metal or stone. They were made of something worse, something that seemed to eat the light around it. Sensors could not count them. Every time observers tried, the numbers changed. There were millions. There were billions. There were more than the mind could hold. At the edge of the galactic rim, the Allied fleet waited. 12 species had answered the call. Ships of crystal flew beside ships of living wood. Vessels that bent gravity took position next to vessels that existed half in another dimension. At the center of the formation, humanity's awakened fleet glowed with power that made nearby stars seem dim. Ambassador stood on the bridge of the flagship, the Remembrance. Around her, the awakened moved with quiet efficiency. They did not speak. They did not need to. 12,000 years of genetic memory flowed through their veins, telling them exactly what to do. Stood beside her, his ancient eyes fixed on the approaching darkness. "They are larger than before," he said. "Stronger. 12,000 years of feeding has made them fat." "Can we win?" asked. Was quiet for a long moment. "Our ancestors could not," he finally said. "But our ancestors fought alone. Today we fight with friends." The battle began without warning. The Hollow did not announce themselves. They did not demand surrender. They simply attacked, a wave of darkness crashing against the Allied line. The first hour was chaos. Ships died by the thousands. The Hollow consumed everything they touched, absorbing matter and energy into their endless hunger. Entire squadrons vanished in seconds. Distress calls filled every frequency, then went silent. But the Allies did not break. The Eye had spent 50 years studying human technology. Now they used that knowledge to create communication networks that the Hollow could not jam. Crystal signals bounced between ships at impossible speeds, coordinating defenses across millions of miles. The bent gravity itself, creating shields that even the Hollow could not easily pierce. Their floating fortresses became anchors of stability in the storm, safe harbors where damaged ships could retreat and repair. They made the greatest sacrifice of all. They were beings of pure light, peaceful creatures who had sworn never to harm another living thing. But the Hollow were not living. They were something else, something wrong. They gathered together, thousands of them combining into a single blazing star, and threw themselves at the enemy's heart. The explosion was visible from 3 galaxies away. It tore a hole in the Hollow fleet. It was not enough to stop them, but it was enough to slow them down. It was enough to give humanity time. And humanity used that time. The awakened fleet advanced into the gap they had created. Their weapons were things of nightmare and legend, technologies that the old humanity had built in desperation and sealed away in horror. Beams of energy that erased matter from existence, missiles that created temporary black holes, bombs that convinced reality itself that the target had never existed. Led the awakened in fighter craft that moved too fast to see. They wove between hollow ships like ghosts, striking at weak points that only genetic memory could reveal. Each pilot carried the skills of 1,000 ancestors. Each fighter was worth 100 ordinary ships. But the Hollow kept coming. The battle lasted 11 days. 11 days of constant fighting, of ships dying and being replaced, of impossible courage and terrible loss. The Allied fleet was pushed back, mile by mile, system by system. 3 species were completely wiped out. 7 more lost so many ships that they would need centuries to recover. On the 12th day, the Hollow reached Earth. The planet's defense grid activated fully for the first time since the fall. Weapons that had slept for 12,000 years spoke with voices of thunder. The ocean rose as ancient machines beneath the water added their power to the fight. The mountains split open and revealed batteries of energy weapons that turned the sky white with their fire. It was not enough. The Hollow fleet, though reduced to a fraction of its original size, was still too large. They began to descend toward Earth's surface, ready to consume the planet that had hidden from them for so long. Then Ambassador did something unexpected. She broadcast a message on every frequency, in every language, to every ship in the fleet. "This is Earth," she said. "This is our home, and you will not have it." The remembrance turned toward the largest Hollow vessel, a thing the size of a moon, and accelerated to full speed. Other human ships followed, thousands of them, then millions. They were not trying to destroy the Hollow with weapons. They were trying something else, something that should have been impossible. They were going to push them back. The collision was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships, burning with power that bent space itself, crashed into the Hollow fleet and kept going. They did not explode. They did not stop. They simply pushed, engines blazing, crews dying, ships tearing themselves apart from the strain. The Hollow, for the first time in their ancient existence, began to move backward. It took 3 more days. 3 days of humanity literally throwing itself against the darkness. When it was over, the Hollow fleet was gone, scattered into the void between galaxies, broken and confused, and retreating from something they could not understand. Humanity had won. The cost was staggering. Earth's defense grid was silent and dark. 90% of humanity's awakened fleet was gone. Ambassador was in a medical pod, barely alive. Had died leading the final push, his last words a smile and a promise. "We will remember." But the galaxy survived. 6 months later, found standing on an observation deck, watching Earth turn slowly in the starlight. She walked with a cane now, and her hair had gone white, but her eyes were the same as they had always been. "You could rule us all," he said quietly. After what you did, no one would stop you. Shook her head. The old humanity thought like that once. Power without wisdom, strength without compassion. We burned ourselves down to remember a simple truth. Being powerful does not make you worthy. Being kind does. She turned to face him. We do not want to rule the galaxy, Arbiter. We want to be part of it. 1 year later, the Alliance was officially renamed. They called it the Terran Compact, not because humanity demanded it, but because every other species insisted. And in schools across the galaxy, children learned a new saying. Never pity a human, never underestimate them, and never ever threaten what they love. The stars were quiet now. The darkness had retreated, but in the hearts of 1 billion humans the awakened kept watch. They would always keep watch. Because humanity had learned something in 12,000 years of hiding. Family was worth fighting for. And the galaxy was family now.